Hello, my love. Thank you, Claire, for joining me again today for another conversation. And today we're going to be talking about something that's really dear to both of our hearts because we've struggled with it ourselves in the past, and that is the beautiful word emotion. So, you and I have both experienced emotion from a very negative perspective in the sense that we've really struggled with our emotional side, particularly to be vulnerable and to share sort of our innermost feelings for fear of being perceived as weak and for fear of sort of breaking that veneer that we work so hard to construct. And we both felt that it would be so helpful to so many people who are just going through a load of emotion at this time to sort of hear from our perspective and our journey about it, and to hear from you in particular some of the amazing practices that you've built for your own life and the ones that you recommend to your clients. So let's begin. Let's just talk about emotion, because emotion itself is such a big word. But why are emotions fundamentally so important for us?
I mean, for me, especially during this time, what I said before previously in our previous conversation was about, the fact that people are generally more externally focused. And so during this time, like with COVID, obviously the importance is that obviously people go inward, but that what they're going to come across is emotions, and commonly there's going to be a lot of negative emotions because it is really unprecedented time. And as human beings, when we go into the unknown, we tend to feel feelings of fear. People could potentially feel depression, anxiety about what's going to happen in the future, and it's about being able to deal with and cope with those emotions, because knowing from my own personal journey what it's been like when I've experienced times of great change or gone into the unknown, or things that are out of my control have happened in terms of trauma. Emotions have been a very obviously they're an integral part of who we are, but for me, emotion is generally, when people talk about it, they talk about some negative emotion, and most people want to suppress it, which is why I wanted to talk about it, because it's really important that we don't suppress our emotions, but we honor them.
You talk a lot about how suppression of emotion can manifest itself physically. You talk very much about the connection, the mind, body, and sort of our spiritual connection, and how everything is interrelated, which I know from my own experience is absolutely true. For many of us, though, we don't want to deal with negative emotions in particular because they're so painful and so hard. And doesn't it make sense for us to actually push those away? Because what purpose does indulging in those emotions serve us anyway?
Yeah, well, there's two schools of thought really about obviously not dwelling on things, and obviously, yeah, we don't want to live in the past. We don't want to keep dwelling on our emotions and being negative and things like that. But at the same time, I mean, for me personally, I went through my own emotional journey, and to get to this point here today, to be able to talk about it, and one of the things that I had to do was to share and to be able to express my emotions, no matter what they were. So my journey began when I was 26, and I went through extreme emotional pain, and I would say it was actually an emotional breakdown. So at that time, I had suffered a bereavement of a very close family member, and it was what triggered my journey, because she'd actually passed and was looking into the holistic side of things. But that wasn't it for me. It was also the fact that I had to find a solution, because I'd hit rock bottom. I'd gone really low, and I that manifested physically in my physical body in terms of pain. So I was having a very, very stiff lower back, and I couldn't walk properly. So for me, it was like, right, what can I do? Because there's so many things that I tried. I've been to Chinese herbalists, and I've looked at conventional medicine, and it just wasn't working for me. So I was like, I know I'm not insane, but I do feel like I'm about to lose a grip on my own reality, and I really need some help. So again, it's just for me, the main thing to understand in terms of mind, body, soul is that, you know, in terms of the cognitive thinking cycle, which people may have heard of, you know, it starts with your thoughts, and then that creates the feeling, and then that leads into your behavior and how you then act and interact with the people around you. So, you know, you really have to look at emotion not just in isolation, but it is really key, because it runs us, and what most people do is allow it to overpower them. So they give them too much power. And for me, letting emotions be your guide. Yeah, exactly. Letting emotions be your guide is about actually going, do you know what? You can have strong negative emotion, and you can have strong positive emotion, and you can have anything in between. But for me, it's about being able to be okay. What I had to learn first off was being okay with not being okay. Being okay to be able to have these emotions wash over me. And because that is what it was like, Henna. I was a mess. I literally was agoraphobic, claustrophobic, insomniac, anxious all the time, severe panic attacks. I couldn't even stand in a shower. I had to have somebody stand with me. I could barely sleep. I was sleeping at all kinds of hours a day just to try and keep some kind of normality. I went to the doctors and I got sleeping tablets and things like this, and it just only lasted for a short little fix. It wasn't, you know, something long term. And I thought, I actually was at the point where, you know, it's terrible to say it, but I wanted to take my own life. I couldn't do it, but I didn't see the point of my existence, because every day I woke up, I was in pain, or I was in emotional pain or physical pain, some kind of distress. And I felt like if I wasn't going to take that route, then what am I going to do? You know, so I had to find ways to, you know, get out ahead of the emotions and actually not let them overpower me, but find a way to sort of control my emotion.
Yeah. And that's the thing about negative emotions, because they can be so debilitating when you experience them. So it makes a lot of sense why we would naturally want to push them away. And also, if we look at sort of our own evolution as human beings, young children are so emotional because they're so present, and they experience and feel and they share in that moment because they don't have a filter, which is exactly why we love children so much, and it's the innocence and it's the beauty, and also why they're so resilient, because they can get over things. And as adults, because of our training as children, which is we're often told, stop crying, or, you know, stop being such a baby, or pull yourself together, normally because the adult is traumatized themselves and doesn't know how to support their own child emotionally through that time at a sort of very cellular level. And we won't go into that in too much detail, but the reality of it is we are not taught to manage our own emotions, or even create a safe space for expression. So over time, isn't it true that we build up walls where we are so terrified to be vulnerable, because being vulnerable effectively puts you in a state of danger, and our primary purpose in life is to survive and to stay safe. So it makes a lot of sense to me why negative emotions in particular are things that cause people distress, and they would rather ignore and not deal with. For me though, in my life, and you talk about emotions being a guide, what's really interesting though, isn't it, the negative emotion is hiding an underlying root cause. And if we actually dig beneath the surface and look at that in a bit more detail, when we experience negative emotions, are we being triggered at a cellular level about something that we believe to be true about ourselves, which is inherently negative? So by way of example, if we're looking on social media and we see something and somebody's achieved something, or somebody's gained something, or presented a certain way of life, and we feel that sort of pang of jealousy or sense of failure in our own lives, is that negative emotion a reflection of some inner insecurity that we feel about ourselves? And is that what you talk about when you say use your emotions as a guide?
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, you know, going back to that time, just to hit on what you're saying, you know, my holistic therapist that I found in the end, you know, I had to be able to. I mean, I think the first thing when you're experiencing like overwhelming emotion is to be able to maybe reach out for help. If not, is to introspect, is to look inside yourself, because there's always a trigger. That's right, and it's telling you something. It's almost like a little warning sign. So you need to examine it. It's like examining the wreckage, if you like. So really, my therapist gave me permission to, it's the first time ever in my life, because it's embarrassing to break down and not be the person who you are. People think that you are, and to try and hold up this mask that you've been wearing, and to feel vulnerable. And it's really important to be able to honour your emotions by not suppressing, and being able to allow them to flow and express them in a safe space. That's really important. And so that's what she did for me. And so, yeah, I mean, I realized then that, there's an emotional scale. And so, there's a range of emotions. So you can't, like, if you cut off the part of negative emotion on the scale, then you literally, it's like having night and no day, or day and no night. You've got to have both. They're important. They're both integral to us as human beings. And it's not to view negative emotion in a bad way, if you know what I mean. Because the first thing is, when you feel that pain, the first thing you just want to get rid of it. I don't want to, move away from that. But actually what you're doing is, like you say, you're storing it then at a cellular level. And it will come back up. At night, when you first, when you calm down, or when you feel most vulnerable, these things will just come back up and resurface, because everything in the body is stored. Trauma surgeons have recognized that the brain may forget, but the body keeps score. That's really important to know, that, on a cellular level, all of our emotional stuff, everything we've ever been exposed to is stored in our physical body emotionally. And there's actually like a little map for that.
Yeah. So you talk about, when you say trauma, you're talking about really emotional trauma, which is oftentimes much more sort of life affecting than even a physical wound, because we tend to emotional scars and wounds, and we gloss over, don't we? We try and replace those negative experiences and feelings with things that make us happy temporarily in the moment. And it's that veneer of external validation which really perpetuates some of these underlying core beliefs and negative feelings. Because the truth of the matter is, in its very simplest form, that little inner subconscious voice that talks to you when you're alone and no one else is around often says the most and worst things than anyone else can ever say. So that inner voice can be so unkind, and it's like this subconscious repetitive cassette player, and it's subconscious, so we don't always notice it, but it will often be triggered by these moments of when we feel sad or negative, because we can suddenly then get into a spiral, can't we? Somebody said something or done something, and if we don't nip it in the bud and deal with it and really get to the root of the problem, i.e. what is this triggering in me, and what is this sort of teaching me that I need to maybe work on in myself, it will only perpetuate and snowball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in terms of the process, because everything is a process for me, and I realized this in life, I might as well just get out a whip sign and say, everything's work in progress. I'm always on the journey to, getting there, never ever there, just always becoming. And so for me, it's like, okay, one of the things that I realized was, okay, when I don't suppress, I express that emotion, because that's what it wants. It wants attention. It needs to be released. And once that's released, it lets the air out of the balloon, and it allows the cork to float to the top. And so it's almost like you go low to come high. I was speaking to a client this week who, since COVID, she'd been at home with her family. Some family members are not so, they don't get on so well, and she finds the other person to be very manipulative, and it gets her down normally. But being in that situation 24/7, not being able to escape, really got to her, and she spent a few weeks in absolute, emotional distress. And she talked to me, she said to me, but I've come back round. And I said, well, how have you done this? And she said, well, what happened to me was I was getting up every day, just, moaning, cursing, like in my head thinking, oh my God, and like completely resistant to everything that was what is. And then I got to a point where I can't live like this anymore, because what are my options? And obviously we always have choice. And then she decided, no, I'm not going to allow it to run my life. I'm not going to let this take over my whole body, my system, my mind, everything, who I am, change who I am as a person. I'm going to let go. And she said the first thing she felt was gratitude. So she started to go from the negative side of the scale and come up on the positive side of the scale, because she decided to let go. And what I've understood in this process is that allowing allows for acceptance, and acceptance then allows for forgiveness. Very often we have to forgive ourselves before we can forgive other people. And that's when the transformation takes place.
Yeah.
That's when the emotion does not run us. We can watch it almost like a passive observer and go, okay, so that triggers me. Once you know this, once you internally analyze this, that emotion is triggering me. What's that emotion mean? Then you know the meaning. When you come face to face with that situation or emotion again, you know. And what happens with every single emotion once you release it is it releases, and it goes.
That's right.
It never. Everything is always transient, and nothing is stagnant. So it's like I literally felt like I was grasping for my life, and I thought I can never get away from these emotions, get out of this situation. And it was literally like being washed upon a beach, mangled, just, hair and everything just disheveled completely. Yeah. And I thought, I can't do this. These are just washing over me. I remember once when I went to Hawaii when I finished university. I had a holiday to Hawaii, and over there they're big into surfing. And I'm a little bit scared of the sea. As much as I love it, I had this fear. But I thought, you know what, it's beautiful here, it's like paradise. I'm gonna do it, and everyone else is doing it anyway, so I need to do it and stop being silly. So I did my first thing. I swam with tropical fish. I thought, yeah, 6-year-olds are doing this, I definitely can do this, right? And then I go to this place where they do the windsurfing championships every year, and it's like 40-foot waves. That's like massive. But that day it was very moderate. There were only 4-foot waves. Well, I'm only 5 foot, so it's only a foot below me, so still quite big. Anyway, I'm trying to go into the sea with these waves, and every time I go into the wave, it's coming at me. I see it, I think no, and I turn back to run, and I literally end up face down, totally disheveled, my bikini's hanging off, and I'm just like that, washed up on the beach, thinking, what is this? It's not even attractive. What are you doing? You're completely making a mess of it. Anyway, this guy comes up and he says to me, you know what the secret is? You have to duck into the wave.
Right. Yeah.
And I thought, that can't make sense. That does not make sense.
Yeah.
He goes, no, you have to stand up, and as the wave hits, you lean in. So I was like, right, okay, lean in.
Yeah.
And I literally did what he said. He stood with me, did it, and I was still stood there, and I was like, wow, lean in. And it's that analogy that I always think back to. Lean in instead of trying to run away and making a mess of yourself. Lean in and stand with the wave and go into it and see what it is, and then it will dissipate. Everything will just wash over you, and you will be left still standing.
Because otherwise life will just continue to batter you. It will just batter you and batter you and batter you, because these feelings and emotions never go away. They will just come up again and again and again. You'll take them into relationships and friendships and into your parenting. It affects every single aspect of your life. And so the reason why dealing with emotions is so important is because unless you do, it creates this unnatural hold over you, or this power over your life, which really sort of separates you from living a peaceful, happier, more joyful life. And you always talk about the fork in the road. At any given time, with any given situation or experience, you always have two options. You can either take the left-hand side of the road, which is the path to negativity and distress and layering upon layering of reinforcement that you're not enough, or that person's bad, or that life is so terrible. Or you have the opportunity to stop for a moment, put your brakes on and go, actually, you know what, I'm going to choose to have a different perspective, and I'm going to go, right. It doesn't mean that you can't feel hurt and you can't go through the process, because actually going through it is so fundamentally important to coming out of the other side. The important thing is not to indulge in it, but also not to numb yourself either.
And numb yourself out. Yeah, so it's like, just don't disregard it. It's still valid. It is still an emotion. It is part of the same whole scale as a whole. It is part of the scale. So you know, like I said, when I always say this, when I signed up for this thing called life, I know that I signed up for the full range. There's no way on earth I would have said, well, I just want half the emotions. I mean, it's so important to be able to feel, to be able to discern, to be able to have choice. And there's so much more value in having the negative experiences, if you want to call them that, because eventually you won't see them as negative. You'll just see it as what is. You'll just see it as part of the process of life.
Right.
But when you look, when we're talking about it for these purposes, then you know you're going to give them definitions. But really, you know, you're driving along in your car, and you know, emotion should just be an indicator. Whoop, should I go left or should I go right? Am I going left or am I going right? I'm going left to the negative emotion. Maybe that's not a path I really want to go down, because I know where that ends. You know, I have a choice. I have a choice to, I'm going to acknowledge that. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to stop here at the crossroads before I take this turn right, because I'm always going to be going right. My cork is always going to be floating to the top.
At the most basic level, we are operating from our loving selves, or we're operating from a place of ego, which is a reinforcement of a lot of negative ideologies and beliefs that have historically kept us safe. So fundamentally, the choice in any situation to make is, do I want to experience life in a loving and peaceful way, or am I going to perpetuate the misery of allowing this circumstance or these feelings to navigate the course of my life? And what's so amazing about choosing or trying to have a different perspective, a more positive and joyful perspective, or use these emotions as an opportunity for growth and introspection, is that once you realize that you can go through it and get out the other side, you start to realize that you do have the ability to change your life, because sometimes we feel that we don't have any control, and actually we do, because we're constantly in control of what we choose to feel. And then the second thing is, this beautiful thing happens where you actually start to become so much more compassionate for other people and their suffering and their journey, because you realize when you go through it yourself that it's actually never about the other person. It's always about you.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, beliefs are just thoughts that you just keep thinking. They're not actually a fact.
Yeah.
So that's what a belief is. It's something that you just keep repeating. And the subconscious mind, the all-powerful part of your, brain will say, well, that's what it is. It's the truth. But actually, if you start to challenge some of these, you'll find your real core beliefs. And actually, when you look at them, you can just look at them and go, actually, that isn't, I know that there's nothing to prove that is true. It's just something that I heard and I kept reinforcing with myself, or something that my mum said or my dad said or whoever that I heard as a child, and I heard, and actually, so this is what these emotions are. Most of the emotions that we feel in a moment aren't even linked to that moment. No. They're usually something from the past. So then people say there's two schools of thought, you shouldn't examine it, you shouldn't dwell in it, but yeah, you need to, because that's where the gold is. That is where the gold is. That is where you are going to find those parts of yourself that are going to unlock you having a successful or a more peaceful or a more content life. And that's, why wouldn't you want that? Of course, everyone on the planet, I don't care who you are, you want to have joy, you want to be peaceful, because that is naturally who we are.
That's actually who we are, yeah. So in terms of some of the sort of practical aspects that you sort of encourage your clients to adopt in terms of navigating through some of these things, because these aren't skills that we're just inherently born with, and they aren't skills that we're even taught. So how do you teach somebody, number one, to process and how they're feeling, And number two is to give themselves permission to be a mess if they need to be, and to just to cry like a baby if they need to, and go through it.
Yeah, I mean, like, Hannah, I always encourage people to, I just give people the tissues and you cry. That's it. I mean, for me, crying is a release. I've always seen it as a release. It's like turning the tap on and letting it all flood out. And that is one of the biggest things that people run away from. It's shame. It's, they feel guilty, but that other people might feel upset that they're upset. Whatever it is, and they hold it and they hold it and they hold it. Well, of course, this then manifests in their physical body as well as pains and aches and ailments, and eventually can be disease and things like this. So you're just holding on, and it's actually being stored inside you. It isn't going anywhere. So actually, to release it, to understand that and to know that, then, and I explain that to people, then they can release. And then once you've released it, then it dissipates. Okay, so now it's dissipated. You can look at the triggers. And I do that every single day through a meditation that I do in the evening. I look at that entire day and I go, right, okay, I mine for gold, I call it. So I'm literally looking for things that I can find that will give me clues as to where I'm up to on my own personal internal map, because I want to improve as a person. I think that's a natural human thing. You want to improve. You want to be a better person. You want to be better for yourself. And forget, even if you don't want that, you just don't want to feel horrible inside, then this is the reason to do it. So, or you don't want to react the way you do with people, or you want to improve relationships. So for me, it's about sitting on your butt, being real with yourself and going, right, okay, what was that? And something you don't like, you can release that, which we're going to come to. And you, through your breath and through your own sort of internal analysis, you can understand yourself better. And when you have that relationship with yourself, well, that's the most powerful thing you could ever have, really.
What's so amazing about that process is that once you've allowed yourself or given yourself permission to experience the emotion, and then you can get to that place where you can sort of take an objective view and go internally and understand where it comes from, what that allows is such a powerful shift to occur. Because if we are experiencing some kind of conflict with somebody that's close to us, we typically tend to use words like, you made me feel like this, because of you this has happened, how dare you, how could you say this about me? So in that moment, with that kind of communication, you are very much in survival mode, your defenses are up. That is never going to be conducive to allowing a positive exchange or communication to occur, because the natural impact is it's going to make the other person defensive too. What's wonderful about giving yourself that space, instead of going straight into the reaction, is once you're able to do that and understand what it's triggered inside of you, it really changes the landscape of the conversation. Because suddenly, instead of saying you caused this, you can say, when you said that thing before, it really triggered it like embarrassment in me, and it brought up this old story or this belief I have about myself, that I'm not important, or that I'm not, that I'm not good enough. And I know you didn't mean to say that, but it really caused me pain. And when you start to have conversations like that, it allows the other person to actually come in with compassion and just totally be there for you, because it's not an attack. So what you also do is you take complete responsibility for your own feelings. And the truth of the matter is, your feelings are your own responsibility. Your feelings are your own responsibility. And you have the powerful ability to make that decision in any given moment, to hold on to your own power or give it away. And when you give your power away, that's when you use words like, it's because of you, I feel like this.
Absolutely. Because again, what you have to, I mean, this has been scientifically proven. This is the stuff that excites me. This is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, because what really interested me was not only like, okay, so it started with the physical, and most people feel physical disease, and then they look to solve that, but actually it links back to their emotion and what they're thinking. So it's the cognitive thinking cycle in reverse. Yeah. So it's, the body follows the mind, Henna, as you know. So by the time it's got to the body, it's been there a while. it's been manifesting a while physically. It starts in the mind, and the emotions are, emotion stands for energy emotion. So it's actually moving things. So our thoughts are vibrational, and they've been measured, and they affect the matter of the universe. So what we send out, we get back. So one of the things that hurts the most is when you have a reflection, when somebody comes to you and you've got this, say you've got a negative self-criticism, which I've had about myself, whether you think you're ugly or you're not good enough in terms of you don't look beautiful or sexy enough as a woman or whatever it is, and you don't measure up, you're just always falling short. And so someone comes back and tells you that hurts the most. But the reason why that hurts the most is not because, that person said it to you, it's because it's something that you actually believe. Because if you didn't believe it, you'd be like, oh, that's not true. Must be having a bad day.
Yeah.
And just completely dismiss it.
That's right.
It's so true.
And that's the clue, isn't it? If you're holding on to something and something triggers you, then quite often it's an opportune time to say to yourself, well, why is it? Why is this causing me pain? And why is this hurting me? Because if I didn't, on some cellular level, believe this to be true, it wouldn't bother me. And that's the powerful journey that you can really go on with emotion. Use it as a guide, use it as a tool. You talk a lot about giving permission, and that's so important, isn't it? Because you are one of a handful of people in my life that I would say I can come to and just be joyful or a complete mess. And I feel totally safe because you've always created that safe space for me. For me, that means no judgment, unconditional love. It's never changed how you've treated me, and it's never changed how much love you've given me. So you've created that, and that's such a beautiful relationship that we share. But actually, what's interesting is it taught me that before I could cry, you had to give me permission. I actually couldn't give myself permission. Where does that come from? Because that's always really intrigued me.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is obviously, is we're socialized. I mean, generally, men even worse than women, to not be allowed to show that level of emotion because it's seen as weakness, and it brings about shame. Like my thing with being grown up was, you'll bring shame on the family. You can't eat on the streets. You can't do this. You're bringing shame on the family. Imagine your one small action is going to bring shame on the whole of your family. You're not going to do it.
Yeah. So you learn.
And if I went out there and told people what was going on inside my family home, if it was arguments or something like that, that would bring shame. You're not to speak about these things outside, so it's that shame thing. You're taught that it's shameful. And then if you're around people and they're upset, then you think, well, I can't really be upset because then I'm going to make them more upset by being upset because, and it's all this stuff that goes on when really that thing just needs to, it's like letting the air out. Boom, it just needs to come out.
One of the most powerful motivators then for wanting to actually look into this a little bit more and address negative emotion is, wouldn't it be amazing if we could get to a place where we weren't so impacted by what people said and did? Wouldn't that allow us to lead a much more independently authentic life where we are our own judge and jury, and we're walking in our own shoes? And what's also beautiful about that is that I think it lends for compassion towards other people and their journey and their stories. And when you stop being so judgmental and hard with yourself, you'll find that you'll automatically stop doing that with other people. I loved having a good old gossip, in my 20s, getting together with the girls, with normally a couple of people on the item, and we'd all have a good bitch, and it was like brilliant. And in the moment, there would be this like frenetic energy, and afterwards I'd always feel a bit deflated and a bit shitty. And over time, what I'd come to realize is that I was only ever enjoying talking about other people because I felt so shitty about myself. And the more work I've done on myself, and everyone loves the word self-love, but it's not really about self-love. It's actually just learning to love and accept yourself for who you are. The more that I've done that, I know the more incredibly compassionate I've become towards other people. And I don't use somebody else's journey or story as a way to make myself feel better about myself. I use it as a way to be inspired and to live more courageously in my own life. And I have so much respect and admiration for anyone that's been through struggle and is so open about their journey, and about what they've been through. For me, that's the most empowering and powerful way, to live your life. And that's what I aspire to do. And that's why I've started having these conversations, and I know it's so close to your heart too. It's because only by opening and sharing our own journeys and what we've been through does it allow other people to go, oh my God, it's okay then, me too. I've been thinking about those things, I just haven't ever thought about it like that.
Yeah, or even spoke about it. But isn't it funny how would you define all of that you've just said, in terms of from going from being somebody who likes to have a good bitch and moan and about, to be critical about other people, gossip, to not being that person at all? What is that to you? What does that mean?
Okay, well, first and foremost, it's allowed me to actually just focus on the most important thing, which is myself. I actually never got any enjoyment out of gossiping and bitching. It was just because I was clearly very insecure, and young and immature. And I've just learned that I gained nothing, not an ounce of positivity or enjoyment from that exercise.
Yeah.
And I never have. And it just gave me the ability to go, what is it that I need to heal within myself, in order to just have a more peaceful existence myself. And that kind of behavior was never peaceful or loving or harmonious with who I am as a person, and who I want to be. It was just a culture that I came from, that many of us come from, which is to judge yourself based on what others are doing or aren't doing. And that's how we were taught to sort of get some element of validation in our own lives. It's like, well, if you're doing better than that person, then that's a successful life. I don't think that's success at all. I think that's misery.
Yeah.
And I think if you are the kind of person that enjoys doing that kind of stuff, then I think it's just really important to look inwardly and ask yourself why. The other thing that I found myself absolutely not doing anymore is, when I go through something negative, I don't jump on the phone and get a million people's different opinions on it anymore. I don't enjoy that process, because what I found it did was it just reinforced a lot of the negative beliefs. And also I would gravitate towards those people that would just tell me what I wanted to hear, because when I picked up the phone, I won't be picking up those people that would be going, well, what did you do? What was your part to play this? They got missed off off the call list. And so I knew that it was a mistake. So what I tend to do now is, if I'm going through something or experiencing something, and if I'm triggered, and I get triggered because I'm a human being, it doesn't matter how much of this work that you do, we're just on a journey. I'm a human being.
Yes.
I'm perfect. I get triggered all the time, but the difference is I try not to react anymore. And when I'm triggered, I can say, I've got enough self-awareness to go, what is it about this situation or this thing that's been said that is so deeply painful for you? Because what is it bringing up within you that you need to work on? And it always comes down to some kind of belief that I've created about myself from childhood. I'm not good enough, or I'll never be good enough for this, or youth is beauty, and all these kind of things that we don't realize are so powerful in terms of how we end up navigating our lives. And for me, the journey is, how can I come to a place of loving and accepting myself? That is the hardest battle, and the hardest journey I've ever been on. And the other thing is, how can I be truly compassionate towards other people, even if they've said something bad about me? How can I come to a place and go, it's not true, and I just send you love? So that's truly the journey that I'm on, and it's powerful. And what's so beautiful about it, honestly, is that it's really changed who I am as a parent, and it's changed who I am as a wife, because in the past, if somebody did or said something, I would make it all about me.
Yeah. So that whole thing then for you was growth.
Yeah.
That was personal growth.
Yeah.
And you are then a shining example of what happens when you actually look at negative emotion, or at those things about yourself that you feel emotionally, negatively, in a negative sense, or whatever, things that you might be scared of, things that you fear. Those things, by facing those things, you are now a shining example of what happens when you actually do that.
And and so that to me feels like a compliment. I'm like, oh, no,
That's not a compliment. That is
I
it.
know,
But
I know.
that's the result of the work.
You know what? And this is the thing. I don't really ever give myself a pat on the back for anything. It feels so self-indulgent. So I've still got a lot of work. But it's been a journey, and it's been really, really, really hard. Deeply painful at times. You know that, because you and I have been through so much of it together over the last 5-6 years. But I am proud. I am actually really proud of the person that I am, and I know that my biggest challenge has been actually being kind to myself, because I am really, really harsh on myself in terms of what I say, what I do. Am I doing enough for others? Did I say the right thing? Did I do the right thing? Oh, I saw that person, didn't say hi to them. I'm so harsh on myself, in
Yeah.
terms of um, feeling that I've always got to get it right. And that's been actually the first place for me to start, which is you've got to stop, Henna. Like, you've actually got to be a bit kinder to yourself. And so, what about you? Like, what's been your personal experience of how you would ordinarily have reacted to situations in the past, and how that's changed for you?
I mean, yeah, like I said, my predominant emotion was anger, rage, frustration. So a lot of feelings of it's like a fireball,
Yeah.
waiting to go off, and like an explosion. That's how I used to be. If things didn't go my way, if the world wasn't, I couldn't see the world in the eyes that I felt it should, what it should look like. Total disappointment and real extreme emotion, very extreme. So we'd go from extreme feelings of love to feelings of despair and frustration. But more, what I realized is that my focus, my internal focus, was more on the negative. So I was experiencing more negative, and it was becoming too overwhelming. So that was my experience as to why, and then it manifested in my physical body, and it was just crippling. So then it's just, it's something that you either die, because I actually, at those points, and I actually wished myself to die. Not many people will say that, I actually wished myself to die. I didn't have the balls to do anything about it, but I just couldn't, cope with myself. I didn't like what I saw when I looked in the mirror. I didn't like what I looked when I looked at my childhood, and I was just focused on all the negative events. It's not that there wasn't anything positive. It's not that no one ever gave me a compliment, or even that, I wasn't the worst person in the world. I'm sure there was good things about me, but for some reason I would objectify everything and generalize and make it into this big negative ball. And it was all just emotional stuff that I was projecting out about myself and feeling within myself. And of course, it was just this constant cycle. So I wanted to get off that eternal treadmill of just, depression and frustration and anger. And so really for me, it was about finding the tools, which we were talking about before. So, finding people who can genuinely help you in this time. If you are feeling any of these things and you feel like you can't do it for yourself, sometimes we do need someone external outside of ourselves. And that's another thing. People fear asking for help because it's seen as a sign of weakness emotionally. They might feel, oh no, I'm weak, or, I'm vulnerable, whatever it is. But actually, when you do it, and you actually are able to, because we're all like mirrors and reflections for each other. And sometimes I can say, I'm driving along in my car again on my own little journey, and I've got my blind spot. There's things that I can't see in my blind spot when I look in the mirror, and I look in the rearview mirror. There's things I can't see, but somebody else may be able to see for me. So it's really important. I've realised the importance of that. But I didn't come from a family that grew up that, you asked for help. No, you got on and you did it all yourself. If you didn't, there was something wrong with you. What's wrong with you? I had a grandmother that said, I don't do stress. I mean, so imagine that. You are not even allowed to do stress because it's seen as a weakness, and everybody's stressed. And it's funny because my grandma has evolved in terms of her understanding and thinking. And now she says, you know what I realise? That you young people of today, you have a lot more to deal with, because It's you know, the way that it is now, you can work every day, it's 24/7. You know, you don't have time. We used to go to parties, and we used to do this, and we used to do that, and things were a lot slower. So they had more joy and more time, whereas we're just constantly going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And that is one of the beauties of, even though this is a negative time, this is the gold of this situation for me, is that you've got more time to actually examine yourself emotionally and work it out, and rise up. Let that cork rise from the bottom and let it rise up to the top. You know, it is maybe at the bottom, but it will always rise back up, and you have to go low to come back high. And get dirty, you know, get uncomfortable, feel the pain, and then, you know, come on the other side. So one of the things that I also found, which was instrumental in a lot of change, was I was already sort of learning to meditate, and meditation had taken me into that more Zen space within myself. But I still realized that someone could come into my space, show me a certain disrespect or be angry towards me. And at the time I had a very, how would you put it, dysfunctional relationship. And I would just be drained and want to retaliate. So then my pride would kick in, and I'd want to show anger back. And I'd find myself in these battles all the time, and then end up just never ever won. And I'd feel these feelings of resentment and hate. And I heard someone say recently, and it was really, really cool. I thought, that is it. It was on some kind of television program. They said that hating somebody, having the energy, spending time hating or resenting, feeling anger towards somebody, is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, because you just feel it within your system, and then I'm taking on all this resentment and anger, and it's in me, it's damage. When people say it's literally damaging you to be that way, it is literally changing all the cells in your body, how you vibrate, what you think, how you feel, what you put out there, how you interact with everyone. It changes your whole world. And that's what I realized. And one of the things that I like to do now is I was introduced to a technique, release technique, and it was about releasing through the breath. So what you do, and I do this all the time, it's never gone away from me, is to do a body scan, assess, because everything in your body, no matter what you've been through, whatever your mind has been exposed to since the moment you were born, you know, from your chest down to your abdomen and your stomach, everything is stored physically. Yeah. You can feel it. And people go, what? And then your brain is like a recording and a playback machine. So it gets exposed to stuff, and all it'll do is keep regurgitating playback. So that's why you'll keep going through that emotion, because the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's real or what's a dream. So or a vision. So you're thinking about something, you're replaying that back in your head. You're going through the emotion as if it's happening right now.
That's why people will say, I feel sick, or my chest feels really tight. Because that is the physical manifestation of the negative feeling. It literally is real. It's there. It's coming up. Very powerful and sometimes very, very painful, right?
Yeah. So what, for the purposes of this, I wanted to pick something with you, for example, to give people an example of exactly what I would do with myself. So if you could think of something, not the worst thing in your life. Yeah, you can close your eyes, because that helps you to go into that space.
Okay.
There's something recently that's triggered you. It doesn't have to be the most highly emotional thing in your life right now, but just something that you felt oof, and you knew it was a strong emotion that you don't really want to think about or have. Anger. Okay. And so how is this anger manifested? How did it come into being?
It was triggered because I heard that somebody had said something negative about me. So I automatically was triggered, because it was quite a mean thing, or some mean things. And I felt so triggered. I think I was very, very hurt, but the first feeling that came up was anger, anger and hurt. I would say anger and hurt. So how could this person say this thing or these things? And I felt it physically, actually, even when I'm talking it now, I just feel it in my tummy. So I'm assuming that that's sort of where that is sort of, that feeling is centrally located, and I can feel my shoulders stiffening, and I feel like my body's like gearing up for, it's massively in defensive mode now that we're having this conversation. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's what I'm talking about. The actual thinking about it, just the thinking about it triggers all of the physiological reactions in your body and all of the emotions.
Yeah.
So what I would then do is go, okay, I've located that in my stomach.
Yeah.
Close my eyes, and I'm going to use the breath. So I want you to close your eyes, Henna. I want you to use the breath. So I want you to take a deep breath in, a really deep breath, and then release through the mouth. And I want your exhale to be longer than your inhale. So
Okay.
just breathing in. Breathing out. Okay. And now I want you to use your powerful imagination, as we can. Because remember, this is where the subconscious mind lives, and imagination. I want you to visualize that moment when you heard or saw what this person had said that made you feel angry.
Yeah.
And obviously you're saying it's located. I want you to relocate that now in your stomach. And I want you to visualize an opening in that area.
Okay.
I want you to see it as a window or a door. And I want you to see that it's just stagnant energy, something that you're holding.
Okay.
So that viciousness of that other person, you're holding that within you now.
Yeah.
And I want you to release that.
Okay.
Do you want to release that now? Yeah?
Yeah.
So open that up, and as you breathe in, I want you to open it up, and as you breathe out, I want you to visualize that stagnant energy of anger just leaving. You can see it as a color.
Yeah.
You can see it similar to a chimney when you open up a chimney, and it just lets all the fumes out. And breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. And as you do that, and as you breathe out, I want you to see that energy.
Yeah.
And then breathe in. And breathe out.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
now I want you to keep your eyes closed. And I want you to go back again to that moment when that person said those mean things.
Yeah.
It made you feel angry.
Gone.
Can't feel that.
No.
So that's all you're looking for. You're just looking for a feeling of lightness.
Wow. You know what? I think you've taught me that before, but I forget to do it. But actually, that was so. I can literally visualize it, and for me, it was like like water flowing out of the area, and then it was gone, and then I shut the little window, and actually, when I went back, I was like, well, my intuition was like, no, doesn't even, because it's not even anywhere near the truth. Oh my God, that is so amazing. I must remember to do that.
Yeah, it's just a little, and you could do it at any point in any day. So when you catch yourself, like, I don't know, mothers can get really frustrated with their kids and they want to start screaming, and they don't like it afterwards. I know that they feel guilty because they shouted at the child and they knew that they were tired, or whatever it was, whatever trigger it is, and they felt guilt. You can release the guilt. You could just do that for, mentally while you're doing any task, while obviously you need to be quite proficient if you're driving, but what I'm saying to you is it doesn't have to be a big laborious process. It's just something and what that taught me was I used to get up every morning and my body started to wake me up to do it, because I had a big long list of stuff that I wanted to get rid of. I thought, right, if I can get rid of, and I've got the power to get rid of these emotional things that are just stuck in my body, I don't want them in my body. I'm going to clean up it's like cleaning out your closet, isn't it? It's like decluttering. So I thought, right, this is it. I wrote a list, and I sat with that list every day and went categorically down that list at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. My body would wake me up to release. And to the point where I felt like I was just light and levitating.
Amazing.
And I felt like I couldn't feel where I ended or began. And that was like, oh, amazing. And I felt like a completely new person, like cleaner on the inside.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have to hold it. What it did is down the road, when certain things started to happen, and this is that thing we're talking about, Teflon coated, mate. Nothing's getting through my protection. I felt like, okay, so that my mum's like, who are you? Who is this person? You know, you normally get angry there or start shouting or say something. I was like, I didn't even realise, because the moment just passed, because there wasn't a trigger, because I've learned to let go.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's really the key to all of this. It's important to feel, it's important to experience, because only by doing that can you truly let it go. And the weight of your own feelings and emotions are the things that will hold you back more than anything anyone could ever say or do. So
yeah, letting emotions be your guide.
Yeah.
Let emotions be your guide to letting go and to live in a more happy, peaceful existence, life. That's all I want to share, because that's all I want people to have. That's all my work has been about, is just what are the real tangible things that we can actually physically do,
yeah,
and focus on, so that we can instead of taking the road left to the strong negative emotion, we're taking it the right all the time, knowing that we're going for the high road, knowing that we're going more closer to who we actually really are authentically. It is natural for us to feel joy. It is natural for us to sing. It is natural for us to dance. It is natural for us to be happy. It is natural for us to want good things. And that is the natural state of who we are. And anything else is just resistance. It's just resistance to the natural state of who we are.
You know, and most important of all, we deserve to be happy, and we deserve to be at peace. And it's okay. It's okay, whatever your journey, whatever it's taken you to get to this point, it's all good. It's all okay, you know. And the only thing that you have to focus on is the truth of your own journey. It doesn't matter what anyone else says or does or thinks, wants you to be. You have to be the happiest by being who you want to be, right?
Yeah, and it for me, I think one of the most important and clear things to understand is, I'm saying that negative emotion isn't a bad thing. I'm saying use it as fuel.
Yeah.
I'm saying, you know, if you've got, you're at a certain point on your journey and you're showing 50% negative and 50% positive emotion, good. You know, you're going in the right direction. You can tip the balance, and these are the ways to tip the balance. If you're right at the bottom of the scale, you can still move towards, even if you're 30% positive, 70% negative, you can still move, because I've done it, I've lived it, and I know that. I know how difficult it can be. But once you start to practice these things, and once you start to think differently about it, emotion, put a different emphasis on it, it changes. It just changes your whole world. It changes you internally, which is what we want to do.
Yeah. Okay, Claire, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For being with me today. And thank you to everyone for listening in. There's going to be a little tag to Claire's Instagram page. Please feel free to reach out and use her, because she is just so beautiful and wonderful, and will change your life. You changed mine.